Maya Chen had been living in her cramped Seattle apartment for 3 years, working double shifts at the hospital to pay off medical school debt. When the attorney's letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, the envelope was thick, expensive paper that felt wrong in her hands as she balanced her coffee and backpack. Inside was news that would shatter everything she thought she knew about her family. Her grandmother's sister, Aunt Vera, had passed away at 97. Maya barely remembered meeting her once at a distant family gathering, a severe woman with piercing gray eyes who had watched Maya with unsettling intensity. But now, inexplicably, Vera had left Maya her entire estate, a manor house in rural Oregon, 50 acres of forested land, and according to the letter, certain collections requiring special stewardship. The timing couldn't be worse. Maya was 8 months pregnant, recently divorced, and drowning in responsibilities. Her ex-husband Marcus had moved back to Boston, leaving her to navigate impending motherhood alone. The last thing she needed was an old house filled with whatever eccentric hoarding her great-aunt had accumulated. Yet something about the phrase special stewardship nagged at her. The attorney, Mr. Holloway, had included a handwritten note. "Your aunt was most particular about you inheriting. She said you alone would understand what must be done." What could a woman she'd met once possibly think she would understand? The drive from Seattle to Hollow Creek, Oregon took 5 hours through increasingly remote landscapes. Maya's hands gripped the steering wheel as her pregnancy made every bump in the road uncomfortable. Rain hammered against the windshield, matching her anxious mood. She'd called her best friend Jenna 3 times during the drive, seeking reassurance she was doing the right thing. "You're about to pop," Jenna had said bluntly. "And you're driving to the middle of nowhere to check out some creepy old house? It's a very horror movie of you." But curiosity had won. Maya's mother had been strangely evasive when asked about Aunt Vera, changing the subject whenever her name arose. That alone made Maya suspicious. Her mother rarely avoided topics, being a professor of Asian American history who believed everything should be examined and discussed. The GPS lost signal 20 minutes before Maya reached the property. She navigated by printed directions, turning onto a narrow private road, overgrown with blackberry bushes that scraped against her car. When the manor finally appeared through the trees, Maya's breath caught. It wasn't the decrepit Gothic mansion she'd imagined. Instead, a beautiful craftsman-style home stood amid towering Douglas firs, its dark wood and stone facade blending into the forest. Lights glowed warmly in the windows, suggesting someone was maintaining it. Maya parked and sat for a moment, one hand on her swollen belly, feeling her daughter's strong kicks. "Oh, baby girl," she whispered. "Let's see what Aunt Vera left us." A man emerged from the house before Maya could even reach the porch. Elderly but spry, with silver hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, he carried an umbrella and hurried toward her. "Dr. Chen? Shh. I'm Thomas Whitmore, your aunt's caretaker and estate manager." He held the umbrella over her as she climbed out of the car. "Please, let me help with your bags. Shouldn't be carrying anything in your condition." Inside, the house was immaculately maintained, filled with Asian and European antiques that spoke of both taste and considerable wealth. Thomas led her to a sitting room where tea was already prepared, as if he'd been expecting her at this exact time. "I've maintained the house since your aunt's passing 6 weeks ago," Thomas explained, pouring tea. "She left specific instructions about your arrival. I'm to show you the house, explain certain matters, and then leave you to make your own decisions." Maya accepted the tea gratefully. "Mr. Whitmore, I don't understand any of this. Why would my aunt leave everything to me? We barely knew each other." Thomas's expression grew serious. "Your aunt knew you better than you realized, Dr. Chen. She'd been following your life closely. Your work at the Children's Hospital, your research on inherited trauma, your dissertation on cultural memory and displacement. These things mattered to her." A chill ran through Maya despite the warm tea. "She was watching me." "Shh. She was protecting you," Thomas corrected gently. "Your aunt spent 70 years guarding something extraordinary and dangerous. Now that burden passes to you." After settling into a comfortable bedroom, Thomas led Maya through the house, explaining its systems and showing her the pantry stocked with enough food for months. But he seemed to be building towards something, his nervous energy increasing as they approached a locked door at the end of the second-floor hallway. "This was your aunt's private gallery," he said, producing an ornate brass key. "No one but Vera entered here for decades. She made me promise to show you immediately upon your arrival." The door opened onto a Climate-controlled space that took Maya's breath away. Paintings lined every wall. Sculptures stood on pedestals, and glass cases held artifacts ranging from ancient ceramics to medieval manuscripts. Track lighting illuminated each piece perfectly, transforming the room into a private museum. Maya moved slowly through the space, her medical training giving way to long-dormant memories of childhood museum visits. She'd always loved art, but had pursued medicine instead, a practical choice her parents had encouraged. Now, surrounded by masterpieces, something stirred in her chest, a recognition she couldn't name. "Mr. Whitmore, this collection must be worth millions. How did my aunt afford all this?" Thomas's expression was unreadable. "She didn't buy them, Dr. Chen. She rescued them. Each piece here was stolen during World War II, confiscated from families who were then murdered. Your aunt spent her life tracking these items down and preserving them until they could be returned to rightful owners or their descendants." Maya sank onto a nearby bench, her hand instinctively moving to her belly. "Are you saying my aunt was some kind of art detective?" "I'm saying she was part of a resistance movement that never ended." Thomas led Maya to a concealed door behind a large tapestry. Beyond it lay a small room filled with filing cabinets, computers, and walls covered in photographs. Maps and documents connected by colored strings like something from a detective's investigation. "This is where your aunt did her real work," Thomas explained. "Every piece in the gallery is documented here. Provenance research, ownership records, testimonies from survivors or their families. Farah spent years, sometimes decades, verifying each item's history before she felt confident about its origins." Maya examined the nearest wall, covered with photocopied documents in German, French, and Polish. Photographs showed Jewish families posing proudly with artwork. It's dated from the 1920s and 30s. Red X marks had been drawn over many faces, with concentration camp names written beside them: Auschwitz, Treblinka, Sobibor. "Why not just return everything to museums?" Maya asked, her voice shaking. "Why hide it all here?" Thomas pulled out a thick folder labeled Reichman Family. Inside were photographs of Nazi officers, post-war documents showing the same people with new identities and respectable positions, and a family tree extending to the present day. "Because some families built empires on stolen property and spent generations covering their tracks," he said quietly. "Your aunt had evidence linking prominent collectors, politicians, and business people to wartime theft and murder. She preserved not just the art, but proof of the crimes. Some people would kill to keep that evidence from surfacing." Maya felt her daughter kick hard, as if responding to the tension in the room. "And now I'm supposed to do what? With all this? Whatever your conscience demands? Your aunt believed you'd make the right choice?" That night, Maya couldn't sleep despite her exhaustion. She lay in the comfortable bed, feeling her daughter's movements, and tried to process what she'd learned. Her phone showed missed calls from her mother, but Maya wasn't ready for that conversation yet. She needed to understand more first. At midnight, unable to rest, she returned to the gallery. Motion sensor lights flickered on as she entered, casting dramatic shadows across the paintings. She moved slowly through the space, reading the small cards Thomas had mentioned, each bearing the original owner's name and fate. Portrait of Sarah Lieberman, age 14, painted 1936. Family deported to Auschwitz. 1943. No survivors. The painting showed a bright-eyed girl with dark braids, her whole life ahead of her. Maya's hand moved to her belly, thinking of her own daughter soon to be born. She found herself standing before a large painting of a family gathered for Shabbat dinner. 7 people of various ages around a candlelit table, their faces glowing with joy and tradition. The card read, "The Goldberg Family Shabbat, Berlin, 1934. Entire family killed at Treblinka except for youngest son, age 6, who was hidden by neighbors. Current whereabouts unknown." Maya photographed the painting with her phone, studying it more closely. Something about the youngest child's face seemed familiar, though she couldn't place why. As she zoomed in on the photo, she noticed details. A distinctive silver kiddush cup on the table. A menorah on the sideboard, a particular style of candlesticks. Her phone rang, startling her badly. Thomas's name appeared on the screen. "Dr. Chen, I apologize for calling so late. I forgot to mention the security system is quite sensitive. Any movement in the gallery after 10 p.m. triggers an alert to my phone the next morning." Maya woke to find her mother standing in the bedroom doorway, her face a mixture of anger and fear. "Mom, how did you?" Thomas called me, her mother interrupted. Entering and sitting heavily on the edge of the bed, Dr. Lian Chen looked every one of her 65 years at that moment, exhausted and worried. "Maya, you need to leave this place. Today. Come home with me." Maya struggled to sit up, her pregnant belly making it awkward. "I just got here. I don't even understand what that's exactly the point." Her mother's voice cracked. "You don't understand. Can't possibly understand what Vera has dragged you into." For the first time in her life, Maya watched her mother break down, tears streaming as she struggled to speak. "Vera wasn't just my aunt. She was my mother's sister. Yes, but she was also... She saved our family, Maya. In 1942, when I was supposed to be born in a camp, Vera got my mother out. Fake papers, dangerous journey, everything. But we had to leave everyone else behind. My grandparents, uncles, aunts, cousins, 23 people, none survived." Maya reached for her mother's hand, her own eyes filling with tears. "Mom, I didn't know. We never talked about. Because I wanted to protect you. Because I didn't want you carrying that weight. But now Vera has forced it on you anyway." Her mother's hand unconsciously moved to Maya's belly. "And on my granddaughter. Don't you see? This collection, these artifacts, they're not just art. They're evidence. They're dangerous. People have died protecting these secrets." "What people?" Her mother's silence was answer enough. After her mother left, promising to return in 2 days whether Maya agreed to leave or not, Thomas appeared with coffee and a thick leather journal. "Your aunt kept diaries," he said simply. "She wanted you to read this one first. It covers 1945 to 1947, the years she spent in Europe after liberation." Maya opened the journal, her hands trembling. The handwriting was elegant, controlled, but the words themselves were harrowing. Vera described entering concentration camps with Allied forces, documenting artwork found in Nazi storage facilities, interviewing survivors about their stolen possessions, and gradually building a network of people committed to recovering what could be recovered and preserving evidence of what could unt. One entry from October 1946 made Maya stop reading entirely. "Met with Alina Chen today. She's 8 months pregnant, alone. Her husband executed at Dachau. She has nothing. No papers. No money. No family. I helped her secure passage to America under a new identity. She wants to forget everything, start fresh. I don't blame her. But I also know forgetting doesn't erase history. Someday her children, or grandchildren, will need to know the truth." Maya's mind reeled. Alina Chen was her grandmother, her mother's mother. A woman she'd been told died young in China before her family immigrated to America. Everything was a lie. She turned to Thomas, who'd been watching her face. "My grandmother survived the Holocaust. My mother was born to a survivor. Your grandmother was originally Elena Goldberg," Thomas confirmed quietly. "She met your grandfather, Michael Chen, in San Francisco in 1948. He was Chinese-American, a veteran who'd served in Europe, married, and she took his name legally, finally leaving behind her past entirely." "We're trying to." Maya thought of the Shabbat painting, the family dinner scene, the youngest child's face. Now she knew why it seemed familiar. 2 days passed in a blur of reading journals, examining documents, and trying to understand the scope of what Vera had preserved. Maya learned about families, collections, crimes, cover-ups, and the elaborate network that had hidden evidence for decades, waiting for the right moment to bring truth to light. She was in the documentation room when the first email arrived. The sender was anonymous, the message brief. "Your aunt knew when to keep quiet. You should learn from her example. Some history serves no one." Maya showed it to Thomas, who frowned deeply. "It begins, 'I'd hoped you'd have more time.' Time before what?" As if in answer, Maya's phone rang. No number. "Against Thomas's advice," she answered. A smooth, cultured voice spoke. "Dr. Chen, my name is Victoria Reichman. I represent certain interests regarding your aunt's collection. I'd very much like to schedule a meeting to discuss its future." Maya's eyes found the Reichman folder on the wall. The family tree extending from Nazi officers to modern-day business magnates. "I don't think we have anything to discuss, Ms. Reichman. On the contrary, we have a great deal to discuss. Your safety, your child's future, and the unfortunate consequences of mishandling sensitive historical materials. I'll be in Hollow Creek tomorrow. I do hope you'll see me. The call ended before Maya could respond. Thomas was already on his phone, speaking rapidly in low tones. When he finished, he looked at Maya with new urgency. I've called in reinforcements, people from the network, Vera's old contacts. They'll be here by tonight. Until then, you need to understand something crucial. The Reichmans are unjust wealthy collectors trying to hide family embarrassment. They're dangerous, connected, and absolutely committed to ensuring certain truths never emerge. Maya felt her daughter kick strongly, a reminder of what she now had to protect. What kind of reinforcements? The kind, Thomas said grimly, that Vera assembled for situations exactly like this. By evening, 4 people had arrived at the manor, each with their own story of connection to Vera's mission. There was Ruth, a sharp-eyed woman in her 80s, who survived Auschwitz as a child and spent her life tracking stolen art. David, former Mossad agent who'd specialized in hunting Nazi war criminals and their descendants. Keiko, a Japanese-American art historian whose family had lost everything during World War II internment and understood the importance of documentation. And Marcus, surprisingly, Maya's ex-husband, looking sheepish but determined. Thomas called me, Marcus explained, when Maya stared at him in shock. He said you needed help, and despite everything between us, I'm still the father of that baby. I wasn't going to leave you alone in this. The group assembled in the documentation room, and Ruth took the lead. Vera and I worked together for 40 years, she said, her accent still carrying traces of her Polish childhood. We knew this day would come eventually. The Reichsmans have been trying to locate Vera's collection for decades. Now that she's gone, and you've inherited, they'll move quickly to either acquire or destroy the evidence she's compiled. David pulled out a laptop, opening files that showed surveillance photographs of the manor. They've been watching the property since Vera's death, 3 different teams rotating. We've identified Victoria Reichman arriving in Portland this morning with at least 6 associates. Maya's heart raced. This is insane. Can't we just go to the authorities? With what evidence? Keiko asked gently. The Reichmans have spent 4 generations building legitimacy. They own politicians, control narratives, fund museums and universities. They're seen as philanthropists and cultural preservers, going public without overwhelming. Undeniable proof would only put targets on all our backs. So what do we do? Maya asked, feeling overwhelmed and very pregnant. Ruth's eyes softened as she looked at Maya. We do what Vera planned. We use you as bait. Victoria Reichman arrived the next afternoon in a black Mercedes, accompanied by 2 assistants carrying leather portfolios. She was 50-something, elegant in a charcoal suit with the kind of polished appearance that came from generational wealth and careful cultivation. Maya met her in the formal sitting room, Marcus positioned protectively nearby, while the rest of the network monitored from hidden locations throughout the house. Dr. Chen, thank you for seeing me, Victoria began, her smile not reaching her cold blue eyes. I understand you've recently suffered a loss. Please accept my condolences on your aunt's passing. Thank you, Maya, replied carefully, though I admit I'm surprised by your interest in her affairs. Victoria's smile tightened fractionally. Your aunt possessed certain items that rightfully belong to my family. Items that were ... displaced. During the war and have been incorrectly categorized as stolen property. My family has documentation proving legitimate ownership transfer, and we're prepared to make a very generous offer for their return. Maya thought of the files upstairs, photographs of Victoria's great-grandfather in SSE uniform standing proudly beside looted artwork. I haven't fully inventoried the collection yet. I wouldn't know which items you're referring to. Perhaps I could help with that, Victoria suggested smoothly. My family has maintained detailed records. We could work together to clarify ownership of various pieces. Some might legitimately belong to my family's foundation. Others could be returned to appropriate claimants. And naturally, we'd compensate you handsomely for any pieces we reclaim. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. It's a signal they'd arranged. Time to push back. Maya leaned forward slightly. Ms. Reichman, I've begun reviewing my aunt's documentation. It's quite thorough. She seemed particularly interested in your family's history. There's a whole folder dedicated to it, actually. Victoria's composure cracked for just a moment, something dark flashing in her eyes. I'm sure there is. Your aunt had... theories. About my family that were entirely unfounded? Conspiracy theories, really? It's born from post-war confusion and misdirected anger? Victoria opened one of her portfolios, sliding papers across the coffee table. I'm prepared to offer $15 million for the entire collection, no questions asked. A clean transaction that would secure your daughter's future and relieve you of a considerable burden. Maya glanced at the documents. The offer was real, staggering, enough to pay off all her debts, buy a house, establish trust funds, never worry about money again. And all she had to do was let history be buried once more. That's very generous, Maya said slowly. But I'm curious, why would you offer so much for items you claim your family legitimately owns? Victoria's smile was sharp. Because I'm a pragmatist, Dr. Chen. Legal battles over provenance can take years and cost more than the settlement I'm offering. This is the efficient solution. Or, Marcus interjected, it's because you know the documentation would expose your family's crimes, and you're willing to pay anything to keep that quiet. The temperature in the room dropped. Victoria's assistants tensed, and Maya noticed both were positioned to block the exits. Victoria herself remained outwardly calm, but her voice carried an edge now. Mr. Chen, I'd advise you to be very careful about making accusations you can't substantiate. Oh, we can substantiate them, Maya said, drawing Victoria's attention back. My aunt was remarkably thorough. Photographs, testimonies, transport records, death certificates. She documented not just what was stolen, but from whom, by whom, and what happened to the victims. Your great-grandfather Heinrich Reichmann personally oversaw the liquidation of at least 47 Jewish collections. He ordered executions to eliminate witnesses. Oh. And your family has spent 80 years building a fortune on those crimes while positioning yourselves as cultural benefactors. Victoria stood abruptly. This meeting is over. You have 24 hours to accept my offer, Dr. Chen. After that, things become much more complicated for everyone involved. She paused at the door, especially for pregnant women living alone in isolated properties. Accidents happen. Fire, robbery, tragic falls. The woods are dangerous. After Victoria left, Maya exhaled shakily. Marcus put his arm around her shoulders. You did great. She showed her hand. She also just threatened me and our baby, which means, Ruth said, emerging from her hiding spot, we move to the next phase tonight. Complications arrived at 3 in the morning. Maya woke to sharp pains and wetness spreading across the sheets. Her water had broken 5 weeks early, just as it had with Elizabeth in the original timeline. But this time, the stakes were somehow higher. The manor more isolated, and armed guards from Victoria Reichmann's team now openly patrolling the property's perimeter. Marcus drove while David and Ruth followed in a second car. Thomas had called ahead to the hospital 30 miles away, explaining the situation to a doctor he knew could be trusted. But halfway there, headlights appeared behind them, a black SUV matching their speed, clearly following. We've got company, Marcus said tensely, accelerating. The SUV kept pace. Maya gripped the door handle through another contraction, trying to breathe through the pain while terror made her heart race. Marcus, I know. Hold on. He took a sudden turn onto a logging road, tires squealing. The SUV followed, but couldn't match his maneuvering on the narrow, winding path. Behind them, David's car deliberately blocked the road, forcing the SUV to stop. They reached the hospital just as Maya's contractions were 3 minutes apart. A team rushed her inside while Marcus parked, and in the controlled chaos of an emergency delivery, Maya felt strangely calm. This, at least, was familiar territory. She was a doctor. She understood hospitals, procedures, the medical ballet of bringing a life into the world. 8 hours later, her daughter was born, small but healthy, with a powerful cry that filled the delivery room. Maya held her, tears streaming as Marcus stood beside them, his face full of wonder. She's perfect, he whispered.
What should we name her?
Maya looked down at her daughter's alert eyes, already seeming to take in everything around her. Vera, she said firmly. Her name is Vera. During Maya's recovery, Ruth made a discovery in the documentation room that changed everything. Hidden in a false bottom of one of Vera's filing cabinets was a small metal box containing a USB drive and a letter addressed to Maya. My dear Maya, the letter. Read in Vera's precise handwriting if you're reading this. You've taken the first steps toward understanding your purpose. The USB drive contains evidence even I was afraid to make fully public during my lifetime. It includes filmed testimonies from survivors, detailed financial records showing how the Reichmans laundered stolen wealth into legitimate businesses, and proof of current criminal activities designed to suppress this information. More importantly, it contains the key to bringing down not just the Reichmans, but the entire network of families who've profited from Holocaust theft. The letter continued, "I chose you because you're a healer. Maya, you understand trauma, how it passes through generations, how it must be acknowledged before it can heal. You also have the courage I lacked in my later years, and the generational distance to see this clearly rather than through my own pain. Your daughter Vera, if that's what you choose to name her, will grow up knowing her true heritage and the importance of remembering. That is my gift to you both." Maya watched the filmed testimonies with the network gathered around. Elderly survivors spoke directly to the camera, their voices steady despite the weight of their memories, describing exactly what had been taken from them and by whom. Several specifically mentioned Heinrich Reichmann by name, detailing his cruelty and methodical theft. But the most damning evidence was a recorded conversation from 1989 between Heinrich himself, then 90 years old, and his grandson, Victoria's father. In it, Heinrich laughed about fooling everyone and bragged about murders he'd committed personally. The recording had been obtained by Vera through sources she'd never revealed, hidden and preserved for this moment. "This changes everything," Keiko breathed. "This is undeniable. This is dangerous," David countered. "The moment we release this, we become targets for every criminal organization the Reichmans have connections to." Ruth looked at Maya. "The decision is yours. You inherited this burden. You decide how to carry it." 3 months later, Maya stood before an international press conference at the Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington. DC baby Vera slept peacefully in a carrier against her chest, unaware that she was about to witness history. Behind Maya stood Ruth, David, Keiko, Thomas, and Marcus, along with 24 survivors and descendants who'd come forward once news of the collection's existence became public. To her right, museum directors and representatives from restitution organizations waited to speak. To her left, lawyers prepared to file criminal charges. "My name is Dr. Maya Chen," she began, her voice steady despite her nervousness. 3 months ago, I inherited a collection of art and artifacts from my great-aunt, Vera Goldberg. What I didn't inherit was the full truth about my family, my heritage, and the weight of history that had been deliberately hidden from me. She told the story then, all of it. Her grandmother's survival, Vera's decades-long mission, the Reichmans' crimes spanning for generations, and the network of families who'd profited from genocide. As she spoke, images projected behind her. The artwork, the documentation, Heinrich Reichmann's recorded confession. "These items aren't just beautiful objects," Maya continued. "They're evidence, they're memory, they're proof that the Holocaust wasn't just a historical tragedy, but an ongoing crime that continues whenever we allow perpetrators and their heirs to escape accountability." She announced that the entire collection would be preserved in a new dedicated museum, with pieces gradually returned to rightful heirs as they were identified. The recorded confession and all documentation would be made publicly available, and criminal charges would be filed against the Reichmann family and 17 other families whose members had actively worked to suppress evidence of their wartime crimes. Victoria Reichmann was arrested the next day, along with 6 associates. The investigation that followed would ultimately expose an international network of art fraud, money laundering, and witness intimidation. But for Maya, standing in that moment with her daughter, against her chest, and her family's truth finally spoken aloud, the most important thing was simpler. The silence was broken. The secrets were told. And her daughter Vera would grow up knowing exactly where she came from and why truth matters, no matter how dangerous or difficult. As she concluded her speech, Maya felt her daughter stir, tiny fingers grasping at her shirt. She looked down to see Vera's eyes open, dark and alert, already watching the world with the intensity that would define her life. "Your legacy," Maya whispered, "is knowing the truth, and having the courage to speak it." The cameras flashed, capturing mother and daughter in that moment of transformation, when inheritance becomes purpose, when history becomes present. And when one woman's burden becomes an entire generation's commitment to justice, however long delayed,